Well, thanks for coming back. This is part 3 of the God Conundrum, and we're going to start with the Big Bang, the beginnings of the universe, accident or design. We've only got a 50-50 option here. So here we go. It is scientifically accepted that the universe had a definite beginning. It was 13.8 billion years ago, and it all began from nothing. This is called the Big Bang. In a black expanse of nothingness, imagine a tiny dense spot of energy, something the size of an atom. From this invisible place burst the whole universe with all of its physical materials and components to create the trillions and trillions of galaxies, planets and stars. It's all very bonkers, but it's true. In one flash, this explosion from a point smaller than the tip of one of your eyelashes expanded faster than the speed of light. It was so fast that within the first few seconds, the brand new, never before seen universe that the Big Bang had created was full of physical matter that wasn't there before. The matter made rocks that formed planets and burning stars, shot right out across billions and billions of miles, along with all other materials, chemicals, particles, and gases required to form everything the universe needs to function. Everything we need to survive, in actual fact, from air to breathe and water to drink. Everything was made in a flash, as well as all scientific laws to maintain the universe, such as mathematics, physics, and chemistry. All of these were created at the very same moment in the Big Bang. So, as well as the things we can see, the Big Bang created the things we can't, such as gravity and the recently discovered but yet to be explained or fully understood dark matter and dark energy. You'll think these things come straight out of a science fiction movie, but these are invisible forces that we'll get on to soon. All of this is easy to write and it's easy to say, but almost impossible to imagine. It's bonkers, but it's certainly true that the universe was created by one huge expansion that occurred instantaneously and came from nowhere and out of nothing. Now, it's hard to get an understanding of what true nothingness is. A completely empty room is not nothingness because air, light and particles that we can't see are present in the space. In the space where the universe was made, there was literally nothing. No air, no particles, no chemicals, no light, just nothing. Now, to help you get an understanding of what nothingness is, the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle tried to describe what true nothing is. And even he, with his gigantic brain, struggled with the concept. The best he could do, and it took him years to come up with this, the best Aristotle could do was this when describing nothing. Nothing, he said, is what rocks dream about. Takes a little bit of thinking about, but you get the idea. So it's hard to comprehend how anything, never mind a universe, can be made out of nothing. And there is no one in the world who can offer a sensible explanation of how something can be created out of nothing. But it's the only explanation secular science has when it comes to the theory of the universe making itself by accident. On the other hand, those who believe God made the universe say that they can offer a sensible explanation as to how he created the Big Bang. So how was the Big Bang discovered? The Big Bang discovery started with Albert Einstein when in 1916 he accidentally discovered that the universe was constantly expanding. In other words, it was getting bigger by the second, and this was caused by the initial explosion. The discovery, you must understand, really irritated Einstein. He admitted he did not want it to be true. Einstein and other prominent scientists had previously believed and accepted that the universe was not moving. It was in a static and fixed state, and it was eternal. They believed the universe was the only explainable unexplainable. It was the only uncreated thing known to man. And although it could never be fully understood, no one needed to explain how it was made, because being eternal, it had always been there, always would be, and that's all anyone needed to know to be able to move on with science and with life. Now, this stance was perfectly acceptable and, in fact, a vitally important belief to some in the scientific world, because this theory meant there was no need to consider God as the creator of the universe. If nothing had created the universe and it had always been there, this meant that God could be conveniently pushed aside from all theories about the universe. Einstein's experiments showed, though, that because the universe was still expanding and not actually static, it meant that it must have had a beginning. This is not rocket science, I think you'll agree. Just as a huge oak tree grows from a tiny acorn, there must have been an equivalent universe acorn, something that started it all off. But what was the acorn? How did it appear from nowhere? Was it made supernaturally? Was a technology employed? Or did it appear out of nothing? These questions shook the scientific community to the core. God was back on the table as a possible cause, because either the universe created itself by accident or God did it. There was no other explanation. We've got a 50-50 situation. Now, this was especially irritating to atheists, because the very first sentence in the Bible effectively gives an accurate description of the Big Bang. And it says quite clearly that God did it. Einstein was so perplexed by the Big Bang theory of the expanding universe and its consequences for secular understanding that initially he was hesitant to accept it. He even added some spurious calculations into his equations in an attempt to fudge the findings and hold on to the scientific belief that the universe was static and had always been there. He did admit later that he deeply regretted doing this, and he later confessed that it was a terrible mistake to do so. The fudge didn't last long anyway, because in 1919 the British cosmologist Arthur Eddington came to the same Big Bang conclusion from his own experiments. Finally, in the 1920s, Edwin Hubble, using the new Hubble telescope to observe galaxies moving away from us, confirmed that the universe was indeed expanding. So in discovering and agreeing that the universe had a definite beginning, science was now having to fend off claims that God really did create everything. And what about Albert Einstein's thinking on God? Probably not what you imagine. Einstein commented that the problem of God was, quote, the most difficult in the world. A question, he said, that could not be answered simply with yes or no. He admitted that the problem involved is far too vast for our limited minds. Now, although Einstein was very open-minded on the God front, it seems that the idea of looking into God didn't interest him at all. He concentrated, as we know, purely on science. He said that he believed in a form of God, but not a personal God that people can have a relationship with as Christians do. If anything, he felt that if there were a God responsible for creating the universe, then that God made it, put things in motion, and then left us to work it out. Einstein felt that his job in science was to work out how things worked, not to look for God. Then again, Einstein's beliefs changed over his lifetime, and they caused some great confusion. But he did confirm that he was not an atheist, as a lot of people think today. Einstein was not an atheist. After the Big Bang discovery, he was quoted as saying that he wanted to, quote, know how God created the world. I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon, he said. I'm not interested in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know his thoughts. The rest are details. Now, the details, of course, Einstein wanted to work out for himself. That was the thrill of life to him. But he wanted to know what was on God's mind. Why did he do it? Generally, at the time, the God did it suggestion was made much to the abject horror of many scientists around the world. You see, by the end of the 19th century, many of the great thinkers, the writers, the artists, the celebrities, and the academics believed that they'd solved the God Conundrum. They rejected him and abandoned their once held belief altogether. This was the beginning of a new era for Western civilization. We'd never experienced anything like it. This civilization, of course, was built on Christianity. It was an era, though, where the Western world turned its back on God and relied purely on the human brain. This change was brought about over many decades by skeptical and vocal atheist philosophers, and especially by fashionable scientists like the biologist Charles Darwin with his claims about evolution. It seemed to the great minds of the time that they had discovered through their own scientific advances, calculations, philosophical discussions and experiments that they, not God, were the most intelligent minds in the universe. They just couldn't imagine anything or any being to be more intelligent than they were. This, of course, was a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the more they told one another that they had the brightest minds in the universe, the more they collectively believed it. The consensus of opinion then was that they were cleverer than any god could ever be. The Big Bang discovery, though, had now infuriatingly set them back to square one in their arguments with those who said that God was a lot cleverer than humanity and that he was the one who made the universe. The intelligentsia didn't like that suggestion one bit. Thanks for watching. Come back for part 4.